Welcome back, everybody, and happy first day of the NHL season. We are back. Who can smell blood in the water down there on South Beach? Is there a team that can take advantage of the Barkov and Tkachuk injuries, or is Florida going to be able to overcome those losses? Let's break down the Atlantic Division right now, everybody. Let's get after it. All right, coming in at number 8, I have got the Buffalo Sabres. 7th place a year ago, 36, 39, and 7 for 79 points. 10th in the league in goal scoring, though. 265 goals on the year, goals against 287. That was good for 30th. A few of the roster changes for the group. They do add goaltender Alex Lyon, forward Justin Danforth, defenseman Zachary Jones, defenseman Connor Timmins, goaltender Georgiev comes over, and of course they do trade away JJ Peterka, Connor Clifton, and Sam Lafferty. They had the 9th overall pick, took a defenseman, Radim Murtka, so we'll see how he develops. And of course, we go back to last season when they make the Josh Norris trade with Ottawa. And I look at Norris, can he take this as a reset in Buffalo? Can he stay healthy? Can he get back to being that 35-goal type of guy that he was back in 2022? I think that's going to be really, really important for this team. That was a pretty big trade they made there. What about Yuri Kolek? Can he emerge and be a 50-point centerman there in the middle six for the team? I would ask the same question about the young Jack Quinn. How is his game going to develop? Can he develop more of a scoring touch for himself? We know the big guys on this team, Tage Dobson, Alex Tuch, they're going to need help. And they're going to need some of these young guys to be able to step up and produce. From a defensive perspective, of course, we love Dahlin. He's great defenseman, great to watch. He's going to be carrying a heavy load with Bo Byram, especially to start the season. Owen Power on the IR, as is Kesselring. So that top pair is going to be very, very busy and not something you want to go too far down the road, missing that many defensive players. I do like some of their talent, and I'd love to see this team come together. I'd love to see them play over their skis, win some games they maybe shouldn't. Give me a healthy career out of Josh Norris. Give me 50 goals for Tage. Give me a little bit of consistency in net, and let's just see what happens. But sadly, I don't see enough here to see them climb up the standings all that high. I want to be wrong here, guys. I really do, because this would mean 15 years in a row that this team doesn't make the playoffs. Listen, Buffalo, make me regret this. I would love to see myself be wrong on this one, but I do have the Buffalo Sabres in 8th place. Coming in at number 7, it is the Detroit Red Wings, a team I picked as a wildcard team a year ago. 39, 35, and 8 for 86 points. That was good for 6th place. 235 goals for, that was 22nd. And goals against 259, good for 21st. Additions to the club, defenseman Ian Mitchell, defenseman Jacob Bernard-Docker, forward James Van Riemsdyk comes over along with Mason Appleton, defenseman Travis Kamenick, goaltender John Gibson, of course, from Anaheim. Out the door, Vladimir Tarasenko off to Minnesota. The team drafted in the first round forward Carter Bear this year as well to add to the group. As I said, I had them as a wildcard team a year ago. I expected so much more out of this group, beyond adding Gibson and net. Though there wasn't a lot of change on the roster, and I don't really see how the results are going to be much different year over year. A big question will be the overall development of some of these young players they have. Guys like Casper, Finney, Brandsek Nygaard, defenseman Sandin Pelika. How patient can Coach McClellan be with these guys? Mistakes are going to happen, especially when you're utilizing this many young players. It's going to be worth watching. It's going to be worth keeping an eye on. Of course, I do love Larkin. I love Raymond. I love the Brinket, all part of that top 6. And I do like what they did in net in adding John Gibson. I think he needed to get out of Anaheim, but is it enough? Is his arrival going to be enough to push Detroit over the top? I'm not sure about that. I'm really not. My fear for this team is that, they've had all these years on the Yzer plan, growing and building. They've been right around the playoffs the last 2 and 3 years, but suddenly they've been passed by Ottawa and Montreal, both in the same season. So while they've been right around that wild card mix, I could absolutely see the bottom completely falling out of this group this year, which is why I have them seventh in the division for the season. All right, coming in at number 6, it is the Boston Bruins. Dreadful season a year ago, 33, 39, and 10, 76 points, good for 8th place. Goals for 222, that was 28th. And goals against 271, good for 26th. The team did make some changes this season, adding forward Tanner Jeannot, forward Sean Kuraly coming back for his second stint in Boston, forward Michael Asimont, along with forward Alex Steeves, defenseman Jordan Harris, forward Matev Blumel, and then, of course, the trade for Victor Arvidsson there with the Edmonton Oilers coming on over. They do draft at number 7 forward James Higgins. Will be going to college locally there in the city, so it'll be fun to see him. My guess is we'll see him come spring when the college season is over. But yeah, just a disastrous season that ended with the team selling off multiple core players for futures. And I just feel like there are just a ton of questions surrounding this Bruins organization heading into the new season. It was just last week I had my conversation with Boston Bruins assistant general manager Evan Gold, and I asked him directly, what needs to happen for this team to return to the playoffs? He stated truly that there's a belief within the organization that the team can return to the postseason this season, that they feel like they have the players in the room to do that. And he did give us 3 reasons, or 3 items that really need to happen for them to return to the playoffs. First one he mentioned was a return to their identity. And yes, they traded away much of that identity a year ago with Marchand and Charlie Coyle, Carlo, Frederick, all out the door. So where are we going to find that identity again? And Evan Gold says it's going to be in the defensive structure, being hard to play against, getting back to that style of game. A healthy McAvoy, a healthy Lindholm on the blue line is going to help this, as will further development from Mason Lohrei. You hope for Mason that he's learned from that baptism of fire a year ago. He was just put out there a little bit exposed, probably played more than he should have, just based on all the injuries the team had. The second reason we were given is goaltending, being the backbone of the team. And 100% agree with that one. We remember the mess with Swayman a year ago around the tough negotiations. Whether that had an impact on the ice, I don't know, but it's clearly was just a poor year for Jeremy all around. He needs to be better. He knows he needs to be better. And I think there's belief he will be better this year. The last thing Gold mentions is special teams having to improve. Absolutely dreadful year ago. They were 29th on the power play, 24th on the PK, and it was even harder to watch than what those numbers would indicate. Assistant coach Steve Spott has come over from Dallas to join Marco Sturm on the bench. Spott's going to run the special teams for the group this year, and there's a belief this is going to absolutely be improved for the year. What it's worth, watching the preseason games, it did look better. It looked a little more structured, looked a little more organized, so you hope that will carry through, but we're just going to have to wait and see. My big question for the Bees this year is, where are we going to get goals from? We know Pass is going to get his 40-plus goals. He'll get his 100 points. And I do expect Geeky to be right around 30 goals again this year. But who else is going to step up? Is it going to be Elias Lindholm? Can he carry the load a little bit? What about a Casey Mittelstadt? What about a Victor Arvidsson? Can he be a 30-goal guy this year? It's going to have to take something more than just Pasta and Geeky to drive the offense. Because listen, right now, the way it is, this team is set to play a lot of 2-1, 3-2 type games, and that's just not a recipe for success. That's like Carolina Hurricanes type of hockey, and this team is not built like the Carolina Hurricanes. Locally this year, there was a lot of chatter throughout the summer about, let's let the young kids play. We got all these kids now down in Providence. And many fans were frustrated with all the veteran signings this year. And it kind of appeared to be a signal that the young kids were not really going to be given a chance to crack the roster. But now, we get through preseason, it's behind us. And I think we can kind of see why, what Sweeney was thinking there. The Bruins gave a number of these young players a chance in preseason. Guys like Patra, Blumel, Merkeloff, among a few others. Gave them all the chance in the world to show. And truth be told, they really didn't take advantage of the opportunity. Fraser Minton does make the team out of camp, but the rest don't, and they all go back to Providence. So maybe, just maybe, we have to tip our cap to Don Sweeney that potentially he was right in signing some of these veteran guys and making sure they had some grown-ups in the room, right? Listen, I've had Boston as high as 4. I've had him as low as 7 as I've been thinking about the team this summer. Just too many ifs, too many hopes, hope plays on this roster for the year. I do think they stick around the wild card conversation, but I just don't see enough scoring for them to get in this season. All right, moving on to number 5. We have got the Montreal Canadiens. Surprise team in the playoffs a year ago, 40, 31, and 11. That was good for 91 points in 5th place. Goals for 243, good for 17th. Goals against 261, good for 22nd. Couple roster changes of note. Of course, Noah Dobson coming over from the New York Islanders, the goaltender Kakkonen, forward Joseph Veleno, and forward Zach Bolduc come over. No first-round pick for the team this year. And of course, yes, a magical run to the playoffs a year ago. The team returns much of that young core, of course, with the big addition of Dobson. He's more of an offensive-minded defenseman, and we know he can handle power play 1 duties, which is great. Now this really gives them 2 good power play point guards there on the blue line, of course, with the young Lane Hudson. Of course, this is everybody's sexy pick heading into this season. I like how they're building the roster. Everybody's excited about that. The young players are developing very well, and I think the future is extremely bright for this club. However, can we acknowledge just for a minute that last year's playoff run was maybe a little bit ahead of schedule? Maybe just a little bit. I think so. They were a surprise team for everybody, including myself. And, I just didn't expect that, didn't see it coming. But for this season, I do expect them to be, fighting for that wild card spot again, with the likes of Columbus, with the Rangers, with Ottawa, potentially Boston hanging around in that conversation. But with a reliance on so many young players, it can lead to less than stellar results at times. They got a lot of young players on this team. Looking at their depth chart, I think we really need to watch the development of guys like, Demidov and Oliver Kapanen in that middle 6. They need a scoring boost in the middle line someplace, and how those 2 perform could go a long way. I think we know what we have with Hudson and Slafkovsky. I fully expect both of them to hit higher ceilings this year than they did a year ago. What about in net? Montembeault, can he hold up this season? He played 62 games a year ago, and I have some questions around this. He was good last year. Can he repeat it? Can he stay healthy? I do think this will be a fun team to watch. Their power plays should be really exciting and a lot of fun. And I do think, again, they're going to be in that wildcard hunt down the stretch. I just don't know, if they make it back in this year. I think there's some teams there in the Metro that might have something to say about that. So I won't be shocked if they take an ever so slightly small step backwards this year. But I think the long-term play here is just fun. I think even if you're, if you're a Canadiens fan and you finish 5th, you miss the playoffs, I don't think there's anything to worry about. I think you guys are actually kind of ahead of schedule. All right. Coming in at number 4, we have got the Ottawa Senators. 45, 30, and 7 a year ago for 97 points. Good for 4th. They were 18th in scoring a year ago with 242 goals and 13th in goals against at 232. Additions here: forward Lars Eller, forward Arthur Kaliev, forward Curtis McDermott, of course, just traded for with New Jersey, and defenseman Jordan Spence. They did have the 23rd overall pick. They took defenseman Logan Hensler, adding him to the organization. So, funny thing about this, and looking at their depth chart, I was a bit surprised that this team isn't maybe as young as I thought. They have 8 regulars over the age of 30 years old already. It was just interesting. I just, for whatever reason, thought they were a younger roster. But much like the Canadiens, they were, they returned to the playoffs a year ago. A surprise for some, including myself. But there were a number of NHL pundits out there that had them pegged for the playoffs. When you look at their scoring from a year ago, you had nobody with 30 goals and no one at a point per game average. So kind of surprising. So on paper, they really don't blow you away offensively. but they do play with that edge to their game, led, of course, by Brady Tkachuk. He, of course, is the embodiment of the culture that they play with there in Ottawa. They did surprise me a year ago. I admit it. I didn't see them beating out Detroit. I did not see what happened in Boston happening. And, when Allmark went down with the injury there in net, I really thought the team would just completely sink and fall out of the mix. But good on them. They didn't. They held suit. They kept going. And then, of course, they make that Dylan Cozens trade that we just talked about for Josh Norris with Buffalo, and a deal I really, really liked for the Senators here. I want to see him return to the 30-plus goal guy, be over that point per game pace, which I do think he has in his game. I think, he can probably do that now that he's out of that Buffalo mess. And I'm betting we see him kind of re-energized and, focused out there. I expect a lot out of him this year. Of course, Allmark is extremely important to this group. And I do worry a little bit just about the potential for future injury for him. But I'm a huge Linus fan. I'm cheering for him because when he's on his game, he is so much fun to watch. Of course, we still miss him here in Boston. As we just reviewed, the team didn't make a lot of wholesale changes in the summer. And there's probably really wasn't much need for it, based on the success they had a year ago. I do fully expect them back in that wildcard mix, fighting with Montreal, Columbus, the Rangers, again, maybe Boston in that mix for a little while. We'll see what happens. All right, coming in at number 3, we have got the Stanley Cup defending champion Florida Panthers. Finishing third a year ago, 47-31-4 for 98 points, and have that nice shiny cup to spend the summer with. They were 15th in goals for at 246, and goals against 223, good for 7th. Few small changes here. They do add goaltender Tarasov comes over, along with forward Luke Cunnin. For Noah Gregor just recently signed. But of course, the real work happened where they re-signed that trio of talent with Ekblad, Marchand, and Bennett all re-signing. So no surprise that, the more newer signings they had were more depth moves for the team. No first-round draft pick for the club. Of course, listen, 2 cups in 2 years, and life is overall great for the organization. Life is great for this fan base. Of course, there was a concern, leading up to free agency that money would be tight and that some of that core would move on. Oh, man, Zito, again, proved to be a wizard and got that big 3 done. I've always felt that Bennett, in particular, is more valuable to Florida than maybe most other teams. Just his style of play fits with what they're all about, and it clearly works there in Florida, where maybe it didn't work as much in Calgary. And this is a perfect spot for Brad Marchand. Listen, I wish he was still here in Boston, but this is a great spot for him to carry out the remaining years, of his career. He's just, one of those guys that, you hate to play against him. You hate it when he's on the other team, but when he's wearing your sweater, man, you love this guy. He is a great teammate. Absolutely perfect fit for the Florida Panthers. Of course, we do know the big questions, for the Panthers as they raise their banner tonight is the health of Barkov and the health of Matthew Tkachuk. Let's not forget about the loss of Tomas Nosek either. He was a pretty important guy there on the 4th line. Listen, Barkov makes the engine run and, might be the most irreplaceable player on the club. With these injuries, it means that 3rd line, that was so great a year ago in the playoffs, they now have to elevate up into that top 6. Can the Panthers survive this? I think for the regular season, yes, I think they can. I think, they're not going to win the division, and I'm not sure they even would if healthy. I don't think they really care about winning the division. They've proven they don't have to win the division to win the Stanley Cup. Tkachuk is going to return, probably that December, January timeframe, most likely. And this still is a team with the likes of Verhaeghe and Reinhart, Bobrovsky and net, the aforementioned Bennett and Marchand. The defense is loaded as well. So, yeah, the Barkov injury takes them off my board for a Stanley Cup three-peat. But I still like their roster over the other teams we've discussed so far. And I could still see the club, pushing towards an Eastern Conference final run. I could absolutely see that. But no doubt it's going to be a harder road without their 1C there on the ice. What does Zito do with that long-term, having the LTIR money out there? What does he do with those dollars? That's going to be something to watch as the calendar ticks closer to the trade deadline. I don't expect he's going to sit quiet with this group. Still a playoff team? Absolutely. Another cup? Maybe at least for this year. Maybe not. Maybe not. All right, we are down to 2. And in second place this year, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs, falling 1 spot from their first place finish a year ago, 52, 26, and 4 for 108 points, 267 goals for. That was good for 7th, 229 goals against, good for 8th. Few of the changes here to the team. They do add forward Michael Pezzetta, who I think was put on waivers actually, for Travis Boyd, for Vinny Lettieri. They do add Dakota Joshua from Vancouver. Defenseman Henry Thrun was traded for. Of course, Nick Roy, the piece coming back from Vegas, and then forward Matthias Maselli coming over as well. He'll play an important role for the club. No draft picks in the first round for the Maple Leafs this year. And listen, I guess we're going to find out now, right? We're going to find out once and for all, was Mitch Marner the problem or not? Listen, man, it's so easy for a fan base to throw shade at a former star player as they head out of town. And all fan bases do this. This is not unique to Toronto at all. But in this case, I really don't understand the hatred I hear from Leaf fans about this guy. I just don't get it. You can go back and look at all the numbers. Listen, Marner has had a better playoff career and better playoff numbers than Matthews, than Nylander, than Tavares. So I talked about this on a podcast earlier this summer. Okay, fine. I know. Many are going to say, okay, well, the mix in the room need to change. Or, we'll be better with different pieces that do different things on the ice. We were too top heavy offensively. I can already hear all those comments being made. It's really hard, though, for me to actually believe you lost a 100-plus point scorer and improved yourself. How can you say that? How can you absolutely say that? Listen, man, I'm just going to have to see it to believe it. If Auston Matthews is the guy, he is the player that we've all been told he is, then in my opinion, he has to put this team on his back and carry them to at least an Eastern Conference Finals appearance this year. I think anything less than that is just going to fall short. It just is. It's like now or never, Auston Matthews, all right? Yes, listen, I know he's a great goal scorer, one of the best in the league, but show me where he's actually performed in the playoffs. Show it to me. I'll wait. Still waiting. Where is it? Listen, Marner's been dismissed. The time is now for Auston Matthews to step up and really lead this team into hockey for the months of May and June. Outside of that, listen, I do like the Dakota Joshua signing. Good on the team for at least getting, Nick Waugh in exchange for Marner. I do like that. Defensively, the team added Carlo last spring. Tanev, the addition from a year ago, he stayed healthy last year. If both of those guys can give you around 75 games, I believe the defense is there to be successful. It was hard not to like what they did in net last year. Let's just hope that Wall isn't out for too long here. He is out to start the season. But the tandem of Wall and Stolarz should be good again and repeatable for this upcoming year. This should be another great regular season, guys. I have no doubts this will be a really good team, game 1 to game 82. But I fear that once you hit game 83, it's just going to be more of the same. I just have a fear of that. And like I said, I need to see it to believe it. And of course, we are down to one team. That leaves us with the Tampa Bay Lightning in first place for the season. Of course, they were a second place team a year ago, 47, 27, and 8, 102 points. Goals for, they led the league, 292 goals for, and goals against 216, good for fourth place. Not a lot of changes to the team. They do add forward Pontus Holmberg, forward Sam O'Reilly, and the Howard trade. And just recently, they did pick up goaltender Phoenix Copley off waivers from the LA Kings. No first-round pick for the group this year. And listen, I'm not going out on any limbs here by saying that this is one of the best top 6 forward groups in the league. All right, I'm not risking a whole lot by saying that. Are they getting a little bit of age behind them at this point? Okay, yeah, probably. Are we really too worried about this, though, for this season? No, not at all. At least I'm not. You've got 4 players with 40-goal potential, paired up with one of the very best goaltenders in the league. Yeah, and there's, not much keeping Lightning fan up at night, I think, concerning this group. They have, though, watched for the past 3 seasons as Florida has marched to that Cup final. And now I do think they smell some blood in the water down there in South Beach. I think you're going to see an aggressive and highly motivated team that wants to make sure we all haven't forgotten about their Cup pedigree, right? Because it wasn't that long ago they were the champs. They were right there at the top of the mountain. If I'm worried about one thing with the group, and if I had to poke one hole in this roster, maybe I look at the defensive depth a little bit. There is a lot of wear and tear on the tires of people like Victor Hedman and Ryan McDonough. I think keeping them healthy is going to be so critical, such a big component to their year. And I do wonder if this is an area that the team looks to address as the season moves along. Can they add some defensive depth, maybe some younger depth to that core? The only other real worry right now is Nick Paul, recovering from all-season surgery. He was just placed on LTIR. He cannot return until November. The team has enough scoring, enough forward depth to survive this, and he will be a nice boost to that middle six when he returns. So, I do think they're the best in the division and what should be an extremely fun Atlantic race this season. I won't be doing a full playoff predictions video this year. I am, however, going to replace that with a video around 5 teams I'll be pulling for this season. So that video will be coming out shortly. And for the record, I do have Vegas over Carolina as my official Stanley Cup final prediction for the year. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you're already subscribing to my channel, thank you. If you're new to the channel, thank you. Appreciate you taking a chance on this one. If you haven't done so and want to stay up to date on all the upcoming shows, please hit that like and subscribe button down below. It definitely helps me out a lot. And until next time, everybody, be kind, show love, and God bless. Y'all boys gonna lose, it ain't no doubt. Can't use my name for no more clout. If y'all wanna win, just follow my route. Shorty rolling, shorty tryna get it rolling. Young and grinding, you gon' get it. Put them peas up in the stoley. You gon' drive 1,000 miles till his pockets keep on growing. I be skating all the ice on my neck like a goalie. When she with you, yeah, shorty, she pursuing me. Would hate if I was you, yeah. We the best to do it, baby. We the best to do it.